Hi, everyone. My name is Mr. Jordan, and I teach second grade here at Young School, and I'm here to share with you a new lesson on in reading, and it's all about understanding comparisons. It's Unit 3, Session 7. Today, we're going to talk about what it's like when you're reading to find when the author is comparing one thing to the other. And we'll talk about how we can find those and what we can do in our own reading when we notice those. So let's get going. So, like I said, today we'll talk about finding comparisons in our reading. We'll talk about examples of authors comparing two things together, and we'll think about how those things are alike. So let's see some examples of doing that. But before we see some examples of doing that, let's take a look at our anchor chart. So from yesterday, or the last lesson you did in reading, your job was to pay attention to special language. So first you want to notice it, then you want to reread it to really think, wait, what are they saying? And then you want to remember what it means and then think about why they might be using that. So that's for that anchor chart. And then today's anchor chart, or today's sticky, is when two things are compared, think about how they're alike. And we'll talk about what these pictures mean and how we can use those in our reading and why they would compare a baked potato with something and why they would compare this angry girl with this volcano looking thing. We'll talk about it in the next few slides. Okay, so next. So this is a story that I wanted to kind of focus on this part with you. And let's read it together and we'll talk about how the author used comparisons in this type of writing. It says, I am sizzling like a hot potato. I asked Mama, may I put on my bathing suit? Absolutely not, Mama says, frowning under her straw hat. You'll burn out all day out in the sun. So in the story, the author is comparing how the girl is feeling that she's sizzling like a hot potato. Let's think about what those things might mean. So a hot potato. So I know sizzling kind of comes off as something that's hot. So if you ever put something in a pan and it makes that sizzle sound, it's just something super hot. So if it's sizzling like a hot potato, and a hot potato obviously is hot because it's, called a hot potato. So if we're thinking about that and then comparing it to how the girl is feeling, I'm getting the picture that she is feeling super hot. Also, I'm thinking about the other clues that's around too. She wants to put on her bathing suit. You would do that if you were kind of, super hot and wanted to go swimming. Also, her mother says she can't do that because she'll burn all day out in the sun, meaning that it's way too hot and way too sunny for her to have a bathing suit on because she'll get a sunburn. So instead of the author saying it was really hot outside, she was able to use the comparison of I am sizzling like a hot potato. So that's a great comparison to use instead of just saying something like I was really hot. So that's one example of a comparison. Let me show you another one. This is a type of writing, and this is actually an example of something you could do in your own writing. Today's lesson is all about reading, but whoa, could we actually use some of this in our writing? And the answer is yes. And let me show you an example of kind of a regular couple of sentences that we could use. So it says, once a bear went ice skating. The bear was graceful. He seemed to float along. His smile was sweet. So that's kind of just, writing and kind of using some regular writing from the author. And now let me show you an example of using more comparisons in your writing. Let me move this out of the way a little bit. Actually, I think I might just delete it. There we go. It says, the bear was as graceful as a ballerina. So instead of saying the bear went ice skating or the bear was graceful, it was as graceful as a ballerina. So think about what a ballerina looks like when they're dancing and how graceful they could be. And that's the comparison between the bear and a ballerina. And then also says he seemed to float along like a butterfly. Think about that, like a butterfly kind of floating around in the air, and that's how graceful he is. So far we have the bear was graceful, but then the second time around he was as graceful as a ballerina, which again just gives you that idea of kind of comparing two things, and you know what a ballerina looks like, so you can imagine how graceful that bear would be. And then him seeming to float along like a butterfly, you can imagine that butterfly kind of floating nicely in the air, and the bear kind of doing some jumps and looking just as graceful as well, or some floating along just as well. And then the last sentence is saying his smile is as sweet as honey. And again, it's giving you that comparison. You've probably had honey before and you realize how sweet it is. So that tells you how sweet that the bear's smile was. So the using those comparison words in writing is a great way of just kind of making your story pop a little bit more, making your story have a little bit more of that literary language is just really important. So think about that in your own writing as well. And then here's the last example that I'm going to give you, and I'm going to want you guys to try this along with me. Okay, this is called. This is a book that we're gonna. So the page we're gonna focus on, excuse me, and this says Sophie is a volcano ready to explode. And when Sophie gets angry, really, really angry, let's take a look at what's going on here. We have Sophie over here. She says she's a volcano. Well, I know she's not a volcano. She's a little girl. She has pigtails. She looks angry. But why would it say she's a volcano? And then over here, I see the word explode coming out of it. That's neat. What I want you to do is take a few seconds, maybe pause the video for a minute, and think, why are they comparing this little girl to a volcano? What's going on? So think about that. And go ahead and pause the video, and we'll come out and we'll talk. Okay, so hopefully what you were able to do is think about how the little girl, Sophie, is like a volcano. And one of the things that I can think about is Sophie's like the volcano because of how angry she is, and she's about to erupt. And remember, when a volcano erupts, lava comes out and it just kind of goes over the top. And you can see around her how angry she's getting. And her erupting, her exploding might be her screaming, might be her getting really upset and really mad. Because like a volcano, she's about to explode. So comparing this little angry girl to a volcano is a great way of showing you how angry she is. Now she's about to explode with anger all over the place. That's another great example of using comparisons in your own reading. What I want you to think about today is, what do you do? So I want you to notice when the author of a book you're reading is using special language or comparing two things to each other. And be sure to mark that down on a sticky note or write it down what you see, and you can share it with your teachers on Seesaw. So as you're reading from either your book from home, from Epic, from Raz Kids, from Literacy Footprints, if that's an available app you have, as you're reading, make sure you notice when they're comparing two things to each other. Like maybe comparing how a bear could be as graceful as a ballerina, or how a little girl could be as angry as a volcano. So think about comparing, and when you see comparisons in your own reading, write it down, make a note of it, and you can share it with your teacher. I hope you have a great day reading today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I can't wait to hear and see from all of you some of the great comparisons that you're able to find. Have a great day. Goodbye.